Dune Messiah. A novel summary. Published in 1969, Dune Messiah stands as the complex sequel to Frank Herbert's groundbreaking Dune, marking a significant departure from traditional heroic narratives in science fiction. The novel established Herbert's reputation for philosophical depth and political sophistication, challenging readers' expectations by deconstructing the heroic figure established in the first book. Its exploration of religious fanaticism, political power, and the corrupting nature of messianic leadership influenced subsequent works in the genre and demonstrated science fiction's capacity for serious literary examination of contemporary issues. The work's controversial reception upon publication reflected its ambitious attempt to critique rather than celebrate the hero's journey, positioning it as a prescient examination of charismatic leadership and its consequences. The novel's impact on science fiction literature extends beyond its immediate sequels, influencing discussions about power, prophecy, and the dangerous allure of absolute authority. Chapter 1. The Emperor's Burden. 12 years have passed since Paul Atreides became Emperor of the known universe, ruling from the desert planet Arrakis through his control of the spice melange. Now known as Muad'Dib, Paul struggles with the weight of his prescient abilities and the violent religious war, the jihad, waged in his name across the galaxy. The framing device of Bronso of Ix's heretical history immediately establishes that Paul's reign will end in failure, setting a tone of inevitable tragedy. Paul's extraordinary mental abilities, inherited through the Bene Gesserit breeding program as the prophesied Kwisatz Haderach, have made him both godlike and profoundly isolated. His marriage to Princess Irulan Corrino serves only political purposes, while his true love remains with Chani, his freeman concubine. The novel opens with Paul trapped by his own prescience, able to see potential futures, but finding himself increasingly constrained by the very visions that brought him to power. His relationship with his sister Aaliyah, who serves as a religious figure alongside him, reflects the uncomfortable reality of their transformation from human beings into objects of worship. The opening establishes Paul's fundamental dilemma. Having achieved ultimate power to prevent humanity's destruction, he finds himself responsible for a jihad that has cost billions of lives. Chapter 2. The Conspiracy Forms. A powerful alliance of Paul's enemies convenes on Wallach 9 to plot his downfall, bringing together representatives from the galaxy's most influential organizations. The Bene Gesserit, Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam, whose order originally created Paul through their breeding program, now sees him as a threat to their long-term plans. Scytale, a face dancer from the genetic masters of Bene Tleilax, demonstrates the shape-shifting abilities that will prove crucial to the conspiracy. Edric, a grotesquely transformed Spacing Guild navigator who must live in a tank of spice gas, provides the prescient shielding necessary to hide their plans from Paul's foresight. Princess Irulan, Paul's neglected wife, joins the conspiracy driven by her desire to bear Paul's heir and establish her place in the dynasty. The conspirators reveal that Irulan has been secretly feeding Chani contraceptives to prevent her from bearing Paul's children, keeping the imperial bloodline within Bene Gesserit control. Their plan involves manipulating Paul through a Gola, a clone grown from the dead cells of his beloved mentor, Duncan Idaho, who will be programmed to destroy Paul psychologically. The conspiracy also includes economic manipulation through COM and plans to steal sandworms for independent spice production, threatening Paul's monopoly on the universe's most valuable substance. Chapter 3. The Gift of Memory. Paul accepts the Gola of Duncan Idaho, now called Hate, despite recognizing the obvious trap. The resurrected Duncan retains his fighting skills and loyalty, but lacks memories of his previous life. Having been augmented with Mentat logical abilities and Zensuni philosophical training, Paul's acceptance of hate demonstrates his complex psychology. He cannot resist the chance to have his friend back, even knowing it may lead to his destruction. Meanwhile, Chani proposes that Paul father an heir with Irulan to confuse their enemies. A suggestion that pains her but reflects her pragmatic understanding of imperial politics. Paul refuses, protecting Chani's position, but also revealing his inability to see Irulan's future, a blind spot that troubles him. The introduction of hate creates immediate tension within Paul's inner circle. As Aaliyah finds herself mysteriously attracted to the Gola, Paul's prescient visions show him a future where Chani dies in childbirth at the Fremen stronghold of Sietch Tabor, yet he feels powerless to prevent this tragedy. His growing isolation from his Fremen followers becomes apparent as his transformation of Arrakis from desert to garden world alienates traditional Fremen who valued the harsh desert environment. The chapter establishes Paul's tragic position, possessing the power to see the future but feeling trapped by the very visions that guide his decisions. Chapter 4. Visions of Doom. Paul's prescient abilities reveal increasingly dark visions of the future, including the cryptic image of a falling moon that he interprets as an omen of his own demise. His relationship with Hayat deepens as Paul seeks advice from the remnants of Duncan Idaho's personality, despite knowing the Gola was created to destroy him. The Bene Gesserit conspiracy accelerates when Irulan's contraceptive plot is discovered, but the damage has already been done. Chani's exposure to the drugs has accelerated her pregnancy and endangered her life. Paul offers the Bene Gesserit a compromise. He will artificially inseminate Irulan to preserve the Atreides bloodline for their purposes, but any resulting children will be publicly disavowed. This desperate negotiation reveals Paul's growing awareness that he cannot control all the variables in his complex political situation. The discovery of a Fremen conspiracy to steal sandworms and produce spice elsewhere threatens Paul's economic foundation, while the involvement of trusted followers like General Farok shows how his rule has alienated even loyal supporters. Saitali's infiltration of Fremen society demonstrates the sophistication of the plot against Paul, as the face dancer eliminates potential witnesses with ruthless efficiency. Paul begins to understand that his enemy's greatest weapon is his own humanity. His love for Chani and loyalty to Duncan Idaho make him vulnerable in ways that pure political calculation cannot address. Chapter 5. The Stone Burner's Light. Paul walks knowingly into the trap set by his enemies at Othim's house, accompanied by the Tleilaxu dwarf Bijaz, who carries information about Fremen traitors encoded in his mind. The atomic stone burner explosion destroys Paul's physical sight, but paradoxically enhances his prescient abilities, allowing him to navigate using his visions of the immediate future. His blindness fulfills Fremen prophecy while demonstrating his continued supernatural abilities, though it also means he should be exiled according to Fremen custom. Paul's rejection of this tradition further alienates him from his original supporters while reinforcing his godlike status among believers. The conspiracy's exposure of Korba the panegyrist as a traitor reveals the corruption within Paul's own priesthood, as the head of the Shizarati attempted to procure the illegal atomic weapon for personal power. Paul's theatrical trial of Korba serves multiple purposes: exposing other potential traitors, maintaining the appearance of Fremen justice, and demonstrating his continued control despite his physical limitations. Meanwhile, Bijaz secretly reprograms Hayat with a specific trigger that will activate when Chani dies, designed to make the Gola offer Paul a resurrected version of his beloved. This sophisticated psychological trap represents the conspiracy's deepest understanding of Paul's character, his inability to resist the chance to bring back those he loves, even at great cost. Chapter 6. The Price of Prophecy. At Tisyech Tabor, Chani dies giving birth to twins, a son and daughter whose existence Paul had not foreseen, revealing the limits of his prescience. The birth of his son Leto II represents possibilities beyond Paul's vision, offering hope for futures he cannot control or predict. When Paul speaks the programmed phrase, "She is gone," hate draws his knife to kill Paul. But the shock of the moment allows Duncan Idaho's original personality to overcome his conditioning and regain his true identity. Saitali's final gambit, offering to resurrect Chani as a Gola in exchange for Paul's cooperation, nearly succeeds. But Paul ultimately rejects the temptation, choosing to preserve his dynasty rather than indulge his personal desires. The death of the remaining conspirators and Paul's decision to exile himself into the desert according to Fremen tradition represent his final rejection of godhood and return to humanity. His self-imposed exile serves multiple purposes, honoring Fremen custom, preventing his complete deification, and ensuring his children's succession without the burden of a living god-emperor. Aliyah assumes the regency for the infant Leto II, while Duncan Idaho and she declare their love for each other, suggesting hope for the future despite Paul's tragic end. Paul's transformation from reluctant hero to tragic figure reaches completion as he walks blindly into the desert, stripped of his powers and facing probable death, yet finally free from the burden of prophecy that has defined his adult life. Themes and literary significance. Dune Messiah explores the corrupting nature of absolute power and the dangerous consequences of messianic leadership, challenging traditional heroic narratives by showing how even well-intentioned rulers can become trapped by their own authority. The novel examines the paradox of prescience, suggesting that the ability to see the future may actually limit one's choices rather than expand them, as Paul becomes increasingly constrained by his visions of what must happen. Herbert's treatment of religious fanaticism demonstrates how faith can be weaponized for political purposes, with Paul's reluctant godhood showing the gulf between religious symbolism and human reality. The work critiques hero worship by revealing the personal costs of leadership and the impossibility of being both human and divine. Through Paul's ultimate rejection of power and embrace of exile, the novel suggests that true heroism may lie in renouncing authority rather than wielding it, making it a prescient examination of charismatic leadership's inherent dangers.